If only Al Gore had not conceded the presidency he rightfully won in our Democratic elections in 2000. There is enough evidence to suggest that he won the state of Florida, and therefore the presidency, despite the Supreme Court. Florida's voting ignominy is well documented. Al Gore, instead of conceding to the will of the voting public, bent to the will of the establishment and conceded the election he won. The disastrous effects of this theft are still felt around the world. If only Al Gore had not conceded the presidency, there would have been a more successful transition from the Clinton camp to Gore's, and 9/11 may never have happened. In February of 2001, Al Gore would have read the memo from Richard Clarke about the importance of tracking down Osama bin Laden and the real threat that Al-Qaeda possessed towards American interests. Al Gore would have aggressively pursued Osama bin Laden when the CIA's February report proved that bin Laden was a mastermind behind the attack on the USS Cole. Most certainly his Secretary of Defense would have urgently briefed him in August about Al-Qaeda's plan to hijack airplanes to fly into American buildings. However, our current president was blind to these naked warnings, and the terrible events of September 11th occurred. If only Al Gore had not conceded the presidency, the perverse Patriot Act would never have passed. Today, Americans would have the civil liberties guaranteed to them by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Instead, we have lost our rights to privacy. Our library records can be obtained, and the NSA can eavesdrop on Americans without a court order. The Jeffersonian dream has been supplanted by a Stalinist nightmare. Our constitutional rights are being obliterated, as also confirmed by the Military Commissions Act that legalizes torture and suspends the writ of habeas corpus. The statute of habeas corpus originated 800 years ago in the Magna Carta and gave prisoners the right to know the reasons they were imprisoned. If you are deemed a terrorist based on any pretext, then our government can now imprison and torture you. If only Al Gore had not conceded the presidency, we might not be in Afghanistan 5 years, billions of dollars, and countless lives later. Perhaps the Taliban could have been brought down through diplomacy instead of being resurrected and lauded by its own populace that despised it 5 years ago. Al Gore could have given the billions of dollars we spent destroying Afghanistan to the poor farmers who could have used the money to grow goods besides poppies. Today, the sale of poppies to produce heroin accounts for 60% of Afghanistan's gross domestic product. In the event Al Gore did decide to help the UN topple the Taliban regime, maybe he would not have given no-bid contracts to his friends in the business industry. If only Al Gore had not conceded the presidency, we wouldn't have backed out of the Kyoto Agreement. The United States warming pollution must be curtailed. And maybe Al Gore could convince our nation of this inconvenient truth. Instead, our current president gave all the great polluters in our country the green light and let them monitor their own emissions. Our world reels because of Bush's careless disregard of global warming. Perhaps if our current president had more prescience about the problems associated with global warming, Hurricane Katrina may never have happened. Or at least he would have promptly and compassionately responded. Instead, he relaxed at his Crawford Ranch, asked no questions when he was briefed, and after Katrina's landfall, went on a 3-day politicking tour in the Southwest, including attending John McCain's birthday party. Because of his incompetence and callousness, thousands of lives were lost and hundreds of thousands of people were displaced. But the neocon silver lining in the Herculean clouds of Katrina is that most of the dispossessed were people of color. If only Al Gore had not conceded the presidency, America's most egregious acts of torture would not have occurred in Abu Ghraib, Guantanamo, and several Eastern European sites. Our executive of the Republic insists that we need to torture all suspects, irrespective of their innocence, despite the consensus of psychologists worldwide that say torture does not produce reliable confessions. In fact, most likely the confessions our government receives from tortured inmates are totally fabricated. So why continue? How can we consider ourselves the moral center of the world? It seems our city upon the hill is not built on rocks, but on the tortured dead. We have no moral high ground upon which to stand anymore. If only Al Gore had not conceded the presidency, then we would not still be in Iraq. The hearts of over 3,000 U.S. soldiers would still be beating, and there would be over 650,000 more Iraqis alive. If we hadn't invaded Iraq in a preemptive attack, then we would have more friends around the globe and international terrorism would not be on the rise. Bush exhorts we are safer, but most certainly the war has created the opposite position. If we did not go to war, not only would we be safer, but we would have $350 billion more to keep the federal budget balanced. If we hadn't invaded Iraq, we would not have over 150,000 veterans on disability from our war on terror. If only Al Gore had not conceded the presidency, perhaps he would have raised taxes for the richest 1% of our nation while decreasing taxes for the other 99%. Medicare would be solvent, and senior citizens would have access to affordable pharmaceuticals. He would have allowed the cultivation of embryo stem cells to further the advances against many debilitating diseases. He would not have become the first president to sell off national parklands and undermine the conservation efforts began 130 years ago when Yellowstone became the nation's first national park. He would not allow media consolidation because he knows it would undermine free speech and democracy. He would not use dangerous rhetoric by calling other nations a part of the axis of evil. Instead, he would have used direct dialogue and negotiations, and North Korea would not have nuclear capabilities. He certainly would not have authorized the building of a wall that would separate us from our great ally and second greatest trading partner, Mexico. If only the public demanded laws that would have fixed the voting improprieties that marred the 2000 presidential elections, then John Kerry would have won the 2004 election, and the world would be safer and more peaceful.